How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I have got a very special guest for you all. He's the founder of the Personal Trainer Development Center, Online Trainer Academy. He's an author, personal trainer. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Jonathan Goodman. How are you doing?
Good, man. Good to be here. What's up?
How are you? What's been happening in your world recently?
Things are good. Things are good. We're making waves. Our software platform, Quick Coach for trainers, is making waves, and we're starting to build out like accessory pieces to it now. My focus is always on product number one. And once that's like nice and stable, it's like, okay, now we can build in a referral system. Now we can build in some marketing. I find that a lot of people market a product before they have a product, versus getting something out into the world first and making sure that people actually want it or figuring out what the heck the thing is. And so that's exciting. Beyond that, man, I'm just, I'm thinking about coaching a lot these days. I'm writing another book, which I told myself I wouldn't do. And yeah, things are good.
Oh, nice. And how do you find? Because obviously, I know you've written, quite a lot of books, but and we kind of touched on it before we started recording. Is it ideas that come to you? Do you have to try and carve out time for that? How do you find writing?
It changes, is my answer. I told myself I wasn't going to write another book until I really felt like there was a book that I had to write. There was something that came to me. It's been about 5 years. The last three books that have my name on them were ghostwritten. And so, it was my material, but I wasn't the one who wrote them. They were very much produced for strategic purposes. And I'm not upset about them. They're good books. They're really useful books, but they're not, I don't feel like they're like a part of me, if that makes sense.
Right.
Um, and so I just told myself I wouldn't do that again. It wasn't worth it. And so this book came about, or is coming about, for no other reason than I found that there were certain topics, certain themes that I kept going back on. This idea of this combination of what's going on right now, where you have artificial intelligence technology is beginning to exponentially spiral out of control, and the impacts that that's going to have across the board, where it's going to create, it's already created so much information overload that it's going to be impossible as a human to figure out even what questions to ask, let alone what answers. At the same time, it's going to create massive job displacement. And so, like 39% of, I mean, I'm Canadian. I know you're not American, but we always use American stats. 39% of Americans are scared that artificial intelligence is going to take their jobs. And they're probably right. It probably is. But artificial intelligence doesn't take jobs, it morphs jobs. Like technology doesn't take jobs, it morphs jobs. And so there needs to be a massive retraining, redefinition of job roles. Basically, we need to focus on what makes us human, if we want to be valuable in the marketplace again, because anything else is just going to get replaced by computers. And so there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be out of work. And then the final piece of it, of course, is that there's also going to be a lot of people who have very little to do because their lives are made so easy by technology. And so you think about all these things coming together, and I believe what's coming next is going to be this proliferation of coaching, of just coaches. I believe that we're entering in the age of the coach, and that coaching is actually going to be one of, if not the most predominant jobs in the next 20 years. Because you have all these people that don't have much to do over the course of the day. Well, they're going to pursue hobbies, nerdy obsessions. You have all of these people who are out of jobs, who all have nerdy obsessions, who are going to be coaches for them. And then you have this massive information overload where the only line that I keep coming back to whenever I think about anything I want to learn and I start to Google it or start to search it is, ain't nobody got time for this shit. We're gonna look for experts. I'll give you an example. I decided last year that I really wanted to pursue urban vegetable gardening. I wanted to like build a bigger vegetable garden at my house in Toronto, Canada. And so I asked my neighbors if they had a referral to somebody who could help me like figure it out, because we have a lot of old trees on our property and like a big property, but like kind of an odd shaped property. So it wasn't like super straightforward. It's not like, oh, there's a garden bed here. And one of our neighbors recommended a website called The Spruce. So I clicked on The Spruce and it had 1,500 articles, and each article was about 2,000 words long. And I calculated that it would have taken me 14.1 days to read every word of every article. Okay. That's an extreme example, but like, I don't even know what questions to ask. How the hell am I? So I just closed the website and I searched for a Toronto urban vegetable gardening coach. And I found Lawai. Well, Lawai is a 40-some-year-old Filipino guy who's an engineer by trade, who works in business development for a large multinational, or he did work in business development, who has always been obsessed with vegetable gardening. And now it's his full-time job to coach other people. The next day, for $270, he was at my house doing a soil assessment, looking at the light, talking to me about what I like to plant. This is... I have started to see these patterns, and I've also started to see just how bad of a job coaches coaches across the board. This is not just about fitness and health coaching, but coaches across the board, they think that people hire them for the other reasons than people actually hire them.
Yeah.
And then the way that they put together their packages and their services and the way that they market, it's like people don't hire a coach because they dance like a monkey online to some trendy music on Instagram. Like, that ain't how it happens. It's not that there's anything wrong with being an entertainer. I'm not going to call it a creator on Instagram. I'm going to call it an entertainer. I don't think there's anything wrong with being an entertainer on social media. I really don't. I just simply think that it's a different game. Yeah. You can be a coach, or you can try to be an influencer. And I think both are perfectly fine. But, you know, how do you beat Michael Jordan? You don't freaking play basketball. You don't play somebody else's game. You play your own game. If you are a coach and you're looking to get clients, the way that most coaches are trying to do it right now using social media is gloriously inefficient. And it's because they have been addicted and manipulated and abused by privatized social media companies that have designed their system to get people to work for them creating free content. Right. For if you were to actually calculate your hourly rate for the material you're producing and the time you spend, quote unquote, working on social media, it would be so far below the poverty line, you would laugh. Yeah. And so, you know, you take a step back and you're just like, what the fuck am I doing? Because this isn't how people actually buy things in the real world. Yeah. And so all of these kind of ideas and thoughts and themes just kept coming up over and over and over and over again. And as I met more people around the world, I'm living in Mexico right now for the winter. And so there's health coaches here in Mexico. There's an executive coach that I spent a lot of time with. There's the gardening coach. There's, the book uses examples from all across the board, and they all suffer from the same thing. And so, yeah, I decided that it would kind of be fun to explore this, and I'm having fun writing it.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think there was quite a lot of topics in there. And what was going through my head, you can probably see the fish tank behind me. I actually got a bigger fish tank for Christmas, which I was dead excited about. And from going from the what was going through my head is that the same example, you know, people don't have that time, so they'll go and find that person. And I actually went and found. It was actually a recommendation. Fish guy ended up being, I call him the fish guy, but Aqua Heaven, that's the company if anyone's wanted any fish. And he's actually a builder, but he's converted his garage into basically a fish room. And I went in, and all the questions that I had straight away, and he's wanting to make that into his own company, into his full time, which is, you know, people want that from
he's an obsessive nerd about this thing.
Yeah.
Like how wonderful that we can, as humans now, we've evolved to the point where our lives are so freaking easy that we can pursue these weird hobbies that we all have.
Yeah, definitely. And like I say, I was in there and I was chatting to him for ages, answering questions, and it was speaking to a real person, and there was no a little bit like what you mentioned. He wasn't an entertainer. He was just giving me the answers that I wanted in terms of the result, which is I wanted my fish tank
Mm-hmm.
up and running. In terms of when you said about how coaches and trainers market themselves and try and do these trends and think about, right, if I do this fancy dance that people are going to follow me or buy my products. And I know a
Right.
lot of the content that you share is about, it's not always about being the loudest or the biggest following. Why do you think coaches feel as though they need that, and what sort of like the common mistakes that they fall into?
So I have a friend, I won't tell you who it is, but he's building up his following as fast or faster than anybody in the fitness industry. He'll have 1 million plus followers pretty soon
Right.
across multiple platforms. And I referred to him an assistant coach, somebody who I met, this guy who lives here in the town that I live in Mexico, an incredible coach, an absolutely tailor-made perfect fit for him. This guy had 30 years of experience. He lives in Mexico, so he doesn't need or want to make like a high salary. Like it just doesn't, if he makes $50,000 a year, he's ecstatic. Right.
Yeah.
And 30 years experience, he's worked with all across the board. I mean, I used the example of Michael Jordan, which is funny before because he worked in Chicago at the gym where there was a VIP room that Michael Jordan went to. Like
No way.
he's worked with, that high caliber and super high execs. And this friend made an offer to him that he later rescinded for $23 an hour. And he rescinded this offer because he decided that he wasn't able to bring on another coach right now. Now, my friend has one coach in him, and he doesn't really do any of the coaching himself because he's basically creating content on social media. This guy, I mean, I kid you not, like 3 to 4 to 500,000 followers on just about every major platform. And he can't afford to bring on an assistant coach for $23 an hour.
Right.
Think about that. And so what's happening here? Because I can give you ample examples. That's an extreme example, but I can give you ample examples. There's the example of Jessica, who has 22,500 followers, who sent me a message and said, hey, I have 8 clients. 2 of them are discounted. She made a special note to tell me that 2 of them were discounted. So I have 8 clients, 2 of them discounted. I'm not making enough money. And so I asked her, because like I'm a coach, like I'm not just going to be like, well, stop doing what's not working clearly. So I asked her, I was like, oh, what do you think, what do you think you need? What do you think's going on? And this is through like an Instagram message. She messaged my page and she said, I need a social media manager. I need more professional photos of myself and I need more time. This person thinks that the solution to their problem, where they have a 0.04% conversion rate, this person thinks that the solution to their problem is to do more of what they're already doing, but maybe a little bit better.
Right.
And I think what's going on here is we see social media. If you think about why you actually buy things and how you buy things, think about the people that you've hired in your lives, whether you hire like your own coach. This is a strength coach podcast. So whether you hire your own strength coaches or not, you do hire coaches. Now, you may not consider yourself hiring them, but think about doctors.
Yeah.
So I will give you the most extreme example I could possibly think of, Steven. Last year, my wife got diagnosed with cancer. And it was thyroid cancer. And so we had to find an otolaryngologist, which
Right.
is an ear, nose, and throat cancer doctor. I didn't know that existed before either.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense that it exists. So how did I hire this person? Now, I like to think that I made a very good objective decision based off of full information, based off of all of the things that actually matter. What I actually did, though, was I called people who I knew that were in the medical field and I asked them if they knew anybody. And so my neighbor, his name's Rishi, my neighbor made a recommendation to this guy, Dr. Eptikinidis, I think his name was, Dr. E, I'll call him. And at that point, the minute that he made that recommendation, no other otolaryngologist mattered, right? Rishi said this guy was the best. Now, here's the part I missed out. I didn't mention. Rishi is an addiction psychiatrist.
Right.
What the hell does he know? But we trust Rishi. And because Rishi mentioned that this guy was good, we tried really, really hard to get seen by this guy, and we ended up getting seen by him. And I mean, look, everything was good. My wife's good. You know, she got treatment.
Oh,
but think about what we didn't do. I don't know where this doctor went to school. I don't know what designations this doctor has. I don't know what continuing education or training this doctor has. I don't know if this doctor has ever published any studies. I don't know anything about anybody he's ever treated previously. And I don't know anything about his previous successes. In his world, probably all those things happen. And yeah, sure, his name, when you look it up, has all these gobbledygook letters behind it. I didn't look up a single one of those. I don't know what any of that shit means. Could be anything. Could have just been him writing random letters, for all I know. And so that is a super extreme example where I took a step back and I'm like, I thought that I was actually making a really good decision of who I was hiring. But I actually made a really bad one. Like if you think about all of the reasons that I hired this person, he was recommended to me by somebody who I trusted that is in a somewhat related field, but actually doesn't have much to do with it at all.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how people actually buy things. Think about how did you choose your dentist? How did you choose your accountant? How did you choose your, like, I have a financial advisor, same type of thing. You want to know how I chose my financial advisor?
How did you?
He sat on the board of the synagogue, and my dad also sat on the board of the synagogue. And so my dad hired him because he trusted him because he sat on the board of the synagogue.
Right.
And then when I started making a bit of money, I hired the guy that my dad hired.
Yeah.
This is quite literally how people hire people. That's how it happens. And I can give you so many examples of trainers, strength coaches. Like there's a woman. My mom got invited to a workout class. My mom's, in her 70s, gray haired but active. Got invited to a workout class by a friend that she plays bridge with.
Right.
And this woman who runs the workout class doesn't have a website, doesn't have a social media account, doesn't even have email. She has a WhatsApp group of a whole bunch of gray-haired ladies. And this woman's like, in her 40s, like she's a trainer.
Yeah.
But she has a WhatsApp group that is used for scheduling workout classes with these ladies, and also is used by these ladies to book bridge games.
Right.
And that's her entire business, because these ladies invite other people to come in and join, just like they invited my mom.
Yeah.
That's actually how coaching businesses get built in the real world.
Yeah.
And not to say that there's anything wrong with doing it online. And I can give you lots of examples of people who use, I'll call it new media, to do the same type of idea. But to spin this back around to your original question, all of those examples I've just gave, you would never see.
Yeah.
Word of mouth still accounts for 92% of all messaging. Word of mouth is unquestionably better advertising than any type of marketing, than any type of ads. It has trust and it has specificity built into it. You cannot replace it. The only reason why we don't pay more attention to it, it's simple. It's because you don't see it. You
Yeah.
see social media, you see the numbers go up or go down. And so you become obsessed with these numbers, and these companies have built these systems to addict you. And they've built these systems to addict the producers of content because they understand that they need the producers of content to keep producing tons of content, or else their system is worthless.
Yeah, I think
That's
that
why.
there's the one point you said there, when you were looking for a doctor, is because you trusted your neighbor, and I think that's why referrals can be so powerful, because you've bypassed a lot of other products. A couple of from what you mentioned there, from what you said at the start about the artificial intelligence and those sorts of things. Do you think that because of that, that's where, because as well, because people don't see it, where coaches maybe neglect or forget about referrals, and then sort of trying to balance actually running a business so they can make money, as opposed to like what you mentioned about the hours that people would spend creating content, which is helping people and giving people information, but it's not necessarily going to drive people to pay you for your services, if kind of those questions both make sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reason that referrals are difficult for a lot of coaches is because they're not actually known for anything. Like in order for people to remark about you to others, there has to be something to remark upon. There has to be something specific. And so the more specific you are, the more specific the thing you're known for, the easier it is to talk about you. You talked about your fish tank guy. I sent a referral to Karina Inkster last week, and Karina was somebody in my mentorship, but there's like 400 or 500 people in my mentorship. Like, why did she get the referral? Because I get a lot of people who reach out to me asking if I can train them, or looking for trainers, and I don't do that anymore. And the reason is they were looking for somebody who was very specifically um, uh, helped people gain muscle on vegan diets.
Right.
And Karina specializes in vegan fitness. Now, could you have helped this person? Probably. Probably. Like, it's not that hard. You know what I'm saying? But the reason is, I mean, she became known for that thing, and kind of went in on it. And as a result, she got a referral from me.
Right.
Because for me, when somebody says to me, hey, I'm looking for this thing, or can you help with this thing? I basically want that problem to go away as quick as possible, but I still want to be helpful. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have time for it. And like, neither do you. Like, we're just all busy. And so we want to help the person, but we also can't like take a lot of time to help the person. I mean, we just don't have that time. And so the easier a job you make it for somebody to refer you, the better chance that you're going to get referred.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's as simple as that. Let me give you like a thought experiment. So this is something that doesn't yet exist in the real world, although I know a few people that are starting to build it, so I might have some actual case studies. But I want to tell you about this because I actually think that this is like the most powerful idea.
Yeah.
If I were to start a gym anywhere, I live in the township of Etobicoke. It's technically a part of Toronto, but it's
Right.
called Etobicoke. If I were to start a gym in Etobicoke, this is all I would do to market it. This is all. I would start a podcast, and I would call it The Best of Etobicoke. And I would interview the business leaders thrusting the township of Etobicoke forward. And by definition, this podcast would be rate limiting. It's not a Toronto podcast. It's not a Canadian podcast. It's here's the thing. I mean, so the first time that I told this idea, it was on a podcast that I was interviewed for. That was a gym owner business podcast,
right,
that nobody listens to, because nobody listens to generalized information podcasts. Like 99% of podcasts are generalized information that nobody listens to. But you actually don't need a lot of listeners, because if your goal is to be a podcaster and you're playing the podcaster game where you want to become a Joe Rogan or whatever it is, and you want to get sponsorships and you want to get as many listeners as possible, all the power to you.
yeah,
You got a hell of a tough road ahead of you, but all the power to you. But if your goal is to build a business, right? Grow a coaching business, grow a gym, whatever, get clients for your gym. I actually think a podcast used differently is an incredibly powerful, like I said, this is the only thing that I would do.
right,
Because if you work backwards, if you want to get clients for your gym, you actually just want to be connected to and have trust with and be the center of the community to all of the wealthy, well-connected people in your community.
Mm.
But if you ask people for help, or if you ask people for business, they're going to give you advice. But if you ask that same person for advice, they're going to give you help and they're going to do business with you. And so if you were to call up, let's say, the CEO of one of the, like Etobicoke has this nice healthy mix of like small to medium businesses, wealthy, up and coming, right? As most communities do. And so if you were to call up like the CEO or the owner of, let's say, one of the bigger businesses in your town, and you were to say, hey, what's going on? I'm John. I'm from this business. I want to offer you this discount. Come check it out. If you could even get on the phone with that person, it just ain't going to happen. Or if you were to call up, the head of HR of the company, hey, what's going on? I'm John. I was thinking about doing a lunch and learn for your people. I think they could really benefit because health makes people more enthusiastic and happy. Good luck. I've played that game. Maybe it works sometimes. Now, if you were to call up that same person and say, hey, what's going on, Steve? My name's John. Look, I host the Best of Etobicoke podcast. We interview and profile, give the backgrounds of the leaders of the township of Etobicoke. And I'd really love to interview you and share your story with our listeners. Can I have an hour of your time? You have an hour one-on-one conversation, eye to eye, like we're doing, right? You have an hour one-on-one conversation, eye to eye with this person. In today's world, that might be a more personal, in-depth conversation than this person has with anybody else, including their spouse, that month. You are probably going to be the only person that's ever interviewed them for a podcast. And if you think about what you can give to successful business people, it's funny, right? Like it's not often money that they're after. It's recognition for their success. There's this joke that every author wants to have a big business and every big business owner wants to be an author. What they actually really deeply desire is status, is recognition. And so you can provide that to them. So you actually are giving them something really, really valuable. And you interview them for the podcast. And then, of course, now you just so happen to own the gym in town, by the way. You've had a one-on-one conversation with this person. This podcast, of course, has an advertisement in your gym, for your gym, in the middle of it. This person is your perfect client, by the way. Odds that they're going to refer your gym, even if they don't join, to somebody else, to say, hey, I was on this podcast with John, he's awesome. He owns that gym down the town. Yeah, he's great. Like, we're buddies now. Like, so you do that. I mean, I do 5 podcasts a week. That's all I do. Yeah. You do that with the business owners and you build a relationship with them. They might become your clients. They might refer you other clients. But then here's what you also do. There is, in Etobicoke, there is a completely misplaced but simultaneously perfectly placed Turkish cafe. I want to know how the hell that got there. How did it's wonderful. It
Yeah.
is legit Turkish coffee, Turkish delights, Turkish sausage, like hard stuff to find even in Toronto.
Yeah.
How the hell did this person end up there? What's that story? Like I actually legitimately want to know. I go to that place all the time. I legitimately want to know this guy's story because I want to know about the people who I see all the time in my community. And so I would call him and interview him for the podcast. And I would get his story. And then once done, here's what I do. Here's the growth hack of it. Is I would then print a code, hundreds of copies of it, cost me nothing, $10, $5, right? I print a code. And on that code, I would have like the headline of the podcast episode, like, how the heck did a Turkish coffee shop end up in Etobicoke? Question mark. Picture of this guy's face, a QR code to listen to the podcast episode, and then presented by Jonathan Goodman's awesome gym. The QR code, of course, would take people to my gym's website, which is the podcast page for this episode, which has all the links to all the podcast thing, but it's my gym's webpage, right? And I would go and I would give this guy all of these codes and I would say, hey, man, look, we had a great conversation. Why don't you hand out these codes or staple these codes to every one of the receipts of everybody who comes in here? Because the more people know about your incredible story, the more they're going to want to come back. Like, this is amazing. Like, you've never told this story before. And I can tell you right now, if somebody handed me a code like that at a local coffee shop that I went to, I check out that podcast.
Yeah.
That would immediately get. So you do this at the local pub. You do this. And now you have this one podcast thing, right? You're building connections with all of the business owners and wealthy people, with all of the local shop owners. And then all of the local shops are promoting your podcast and your gym to every single person who buys anything. And you haven't demonstrated a single fucking squat poorly online. Because why do people buy? And so I'm not saying that this is like, that this necessarily like you could still do local ads. You could still do all the other stuff that you're doing. Sure. But if I were to have a local gym, that is all I would do. I'd focus on that 100%. And then the kicker is, because it's local, it's much easier for you. Like, now you have a vision. Now you know exactly who to reach out to and who to talk to. So you're not like, you've got blinders on, you know, like who you're talking to.
Yeah.
But also, people have a reason to talk to you. You know, even just like, I have a neighbor. I don't know him. I've never met him. I was told about him. I have a neighbor who's a VP for Adidas.
Right.
And he was brought in from Europe and he moved into my neighborhood. Now, I've never met this person. I know where he lives, but I couldn't like knock on his door and be like, hi, I think you'd be a perfect member of my gym. But if I had a podcast where I profiled like the interesting people who live in the neighborhood, I could call up my friend who told me about him and I could be like, hey, could you make an introduction?
Yeah.
Right. And now this person, you know, the same type of thing. And then the kicker is this, because it's local by definition, it will be very easy to get sponsorships. Yeah. So now, if you're paying attention, you are getting paid to market. All of the people who you're marketing to are promoting you to thousands of people, because, you know, this coffee shop probably has 50, 100 people walk into it every day. You do that's 10 people. All these people are promoting you to thousands of people a day. That is a specific referral based off of something that you all have in common, which is you live close and you're in this together. And by the way, the one part that I didn't mention is you're also getting free business mentoring by all of the successful people in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. Like to me, this is how you use this stuff. Definitely. It's social media was created to connect us, and yet we all just use it to shout and then wondering why we don't feel any connection. It's like, well, what if we actually used it for connection?
Yeah.
You know, what would happen?
What was going through my head then, it's a little bit like, I can't remember whether it's a Spider-Man quote where it's like with greater power comes great responsibility. Thinking about using things like that, and the key words that you kind of repeated from what you mentioned there is local connections, having conversations, referrals, all those things. Not once was like, follow this trend, do this, try and get this, right. Try and get this amount of likes. And with the, is that where, because people say, we mentioned about people want that reputation, and coaches, personal trainers want that recognition. They want that status. And do you think they're trying to get that just on social media rather than focusing on the people within 15 minutes of where they're at?
You're talking about like the trainers want that status?
Yeah.
I mean, sure. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I really don't. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think, though, they need to be honest with themselves.
Yeah.
The truth is, you can be a coach or you can try to be an influencer.
Yeah.
Both are perfectly fine, but they're very different. And if you try to be one and act like the other, you're going to be really frustrated. I am quite literally trying to win the internet right now. That's the game I'm playing.
Yeah.
I gave myself 3 years. I'm 1 year into it, where I said, I am going to try to win the internet. I will not make money. I will not go out of my way to try to make money for the next 3 years. Because I understand that getting clients and customers and trying to win the internet are two different things. Now, I do think that there are huge benefits if you can successfully win the internet. And if I'm completely honest, I'm a year in. It's like I'm playing business on easy mode.
Right.
I mean, it's never been easier to make sales, and I'm not trying. I'm completely disinterested, and people are like, hey, how do I give you thousands of dollars? Like, I actually just got a text message from somebody right now that popped into my screen, and it's like, hey, we want you to speak at our conference. We'll pay you $10,000. Like no joke. That's just flew in on my screen. And so but at the same time, I'm 17 years into my career, and I'm only starting this with that much experience into my, you can tell, right? Like you can tell when somebody has a very superficial understanding of something, and then you can tell when somebody has just like seen some shit. They've gotten kicked in the teeth. They've played the game. They've done it. They know you can basically split, if we're talking about content, you can basically split content up into two categories, which is obvious and non-obvious. Obvious content is what you use to grow the biggest audience possible. It's largely pandering. All that you do is you just try to repeat what everybody is already thinking in a little bit better way than the next guy.
Yeah.
And you see this all over the place. If you want to be a complete dick, you be really divisive at the same time. Or you just jump from trend to trend to trend. It's like, well, now I like ice baths. Okay, well, last year I liked crypto. Well, the year before that, I liked day trading stocks. It's just like, it's like, I was, and so you see people doing this, where they're just, it's really easy to build up superficial influence with very obvious content. And I do believe that there's a place for it, but I believe that the most effective, the most valuable accounts have a healthy combination of three types of content, which is viral, value, and depth. So viral is this obvious content, right? It's pandering. It's repeating what people are already thinking. And I think that there's benefit to that, but you're not helping people solve any kind of a problem. You're not helping people move one step forward. You're basically allowing people to say, well, look at me. This guy agrees with me. Or if you're really divisive, you're allowing people to say, fuck that guy. He's so stupid. Look at me. I'm so smart. I'm smarter than that guy who's stupid. Because both of those things actually create virality. The only thing that doesn't create virality is anything in the middle that doesn't elicit a really strong emotion. A really strong positive emotion, a really strong negative emotion elicits virality, which is frustrating because they're just like, why are you sharing this dumb stuff? Like, why aren't you supporting good work? But that's just the way that it is. But then you get into into non-obvious content, which you know it when you see it. There's real depth of understanding there. There's real nuance there. It's just like this this idea that this person has put across. He said it in a way that I've never really thought about it said that way before, but the minute that he said it, I can't unhear it. And I think this concept of, stop trying to win the internet. You can be an influencer, you can be a coach, and they're both fine and they're both different. I think that that is an element of non-obvious content because it's kind of when I say it, it's like, no, that makes sense. Like, how do you buy stuff? But it kind of flies in the face of a lot of what you see because a lot of what you see are people who don't know shit about fuck. They just don't. I mean, it's just they just haven't been doing this for a long time. And that's fine. I mean, I think that there's a place for people creating content on how to pick the best hashtags or how to match the best trending music or whatever it is. I just don't think any of that matters very much. If you're trying to build a business, it just doesn't. I just don't think it really matters. And so there's that combination of obvious, non-obvious, and then you have to help people actually take a step in the right direction, which is value. And here the big place that a lot of people make a mistake in is they try to do too much. I think that somebody's goal on front-facing social media content is to try to help somebody take one step in the right direction. It's not try to solve all their problems. Because there's especially in the fitness world, there's unfortunately there's a lack of belief amongst a lot of people who have tried and failed or been told that what they were doing was wrong. And if they buy the solution for $49.99 on auto ship, then, now is going to be different, but it's no different than the last because there really isn't anything new because humans haven't meaningfully changed their physiology for thousands of years. So it really, and anything that you see out there is so anything that's marketed as like the next best thing or some like fundamental difference or improvement or like some like poison, like everybody's like seed oils, they're like the worst thing ever. It's like, yeah, I mean, they're not great for you, but like the dose makes the poison, like they're fine, and so it's just a way for marketers basically to market and to sell. And so I think that the goal of front-facing content is to help people take one step in the right direction to build a little bit of belief. And then you have something like, and this is why I love podcasting so much.
Yeah.
And our podcast called The Obvious Choice. It's why I go in really deep with it now is then you can have conversations like what we're having. You can go deeper, but you can't go deeper. You have to earn the right to go deeper. You've got to earn your soapbox. You can't, a lot of people seem to get frustrated because they just don't like, oh, nobody's listening to me. I can make all this change. It's like, yeah, you can, but you haven't earned the right to do that yet.
Yeah.
And as a consumer of information, there's a lot of people who say that they can solve my problem. And I don't have enough time and mental capacity to possibly begin to analyze what I should listen to and pay more attention to and what I shouldn't.
I think there was quite a lot of good points in there, and it comes back to having those conversations and being able to put your message across rather than, again, which is sticking in my head what you said about just being an entertainer. Another thing, I was quite lucky to have Andrew Coates on the podcast, who I thought
You
gave
two
some.
are like long lost brothers, man. You two are spinning it. Did you make that connection?
And the content that he puts out there, there's value behind it in between what he does, and it takes that time to grow. And one thing that you mentioned is that if you keep at it, good things will go. When you mentioned there about the message about the call that you had, he mentioned about other talks that he's had there. So he's been able to be probably real, be a real person.
Well, and I asked him, when he hit 100,000 followers, he like opened himself up to questions. And I was like, "What's the secret to your success?" And he's like, "Give me a more specific question." I was like, "What?" Like, I can't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I mean, I'm genuinely interested because I admire him a lot. And what came out of that conversation was how important his in-person training is to his content creation. It's all of his ideas, it's all of his stories, it's all of his thoughts. They're all generated from there. And so I said, do you think that you would have been able to do what you've done if you weren't still actively training a full client load? And he said there was absolutely no chance. Right. There's no way. And the audience that he's built is a high quality audience, because you can tell that this guy really does the thing. You can tell that he's a good guy with good intentions. You can tell that he does the thing. You can tell that he understands the thing. And you can also tell with others that kind of make all of these like very superficial, obvious statements that they kind of don't. It's like you're like, what was the Marie Kondo, the tidying up lady? I've never actually watched any of her things, but the Kondo something or other. But you know, she became famous for telling people that they needed to tidy up their lives. Then she had a book, then a Netflix thing, then she came out with this whole array of like products of how to like tidy up. And now she has 3 kids, and she's like, yeah, I'm not tidying up anymore. Like, it's such a perfect example of somebody who just, as they grow and gain more experience, they realize how much they didn't know about what other people in different situations deal with. Yeah. A 23-year-old, I mean, when I was 23 training clients in the gym, I would hold my clients in contempt. Like Tom would show up at 4:35 every Tuesday and Thursday. He would show up between 4:35 and 4:37 every Tuesday and Thursday for years, 5 to 7 minutes late for a session. And I would hold him inside. I was like, this guy can't keep to a schedule. He doesn't know. Meanwhile, Tom was the chief of psychiatry at one of the biggest hospitals in Toronto. In addition to, he was a TV expert who had his own show on TV. And he had 3 kids who were all like edging on teenagers in various sports. And this guy was able to show up at 4:35 to 4:37 twice a week for a workout. Holy crap, that's amazing. But my idiot 23-year-old me brain, who didn't know anything about the real world, because I just didn't. I mean, you just don't. It's not like there's not anything against it. It's just, this is what happens as we grow. Like, I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 9-month. I guess he'll be 10 months soon. It still matters now at this point. You know, I have a 5.5-year-old and a 10-month kid, and, you know, effectively 4 businesses. And I don't even know what else, right, I have going on. And it's just like, as we get older, we learn more things about how the world really works and what's important. And I just laugh at that stuff that I would think. But I don't think people are wrong or stupid that say things when they're 23 or 24 years old and they're putting out all these statements about how you need to wake up in the morning and sit up in bed and take 5 clean, full breaths, and then pick out your first of 2 journals and talk about what you're grateful for, and then have your 10 minutes of gentle stretching before you go downstairs and mix your matcha tea in the traditional way to start the day with the right kind of energy. It's like, now, I wake up in the morning and check whether my kid pissed his bed. Yeah. Then I feed my baby so he stops crying. And then I maybe chug some coffee.
Yeah, I think
like this is how life works.
Definitely. You know? you said there about your client Tom that, you know, sometimes it's, I can't remember.
He's amazing.
I can't remember
He's
the book.
amazing.
I don't know whether it's called liquid thinking or another thing. It's just seeing it from the perspective of somebody else. And the thing that I would take from that is he showed up. You said years there for sessions
Yeah.
showing up, so at least he showed up. Quite a lot
But
of topics. And
we can't even begin to put ourselves in those shoes, though. I mean, that's what I reflect on a lot. Is it's so foreign that even it's funny. Like if you have, let's say, a 22-year-old strength coach that's listening to the podcast, and they listen to that, and they're smart because they're listening to your podcast. It's always important to compliment your listeners, and they're super smart, and of course very good looking. And did you just get a haircut? It looks wonderful. And they still won't really get it because I don't think that you can. I mean, I just finished a wonderful book. It was called Lessons in Chemistry. And it was a fictional story about set in the 1950s about a female chemist and just this insane amount of sexism and tragedy that she overcomes over the course of this book. And it was a wonderful, it was one of the most beautifully written, most meaningful, most powerful books that I've ever read. I still don't really understand what really intelligent, forward-thinking, smart, hard-working women really went through in the 1950s. I don't think that you can unless you're really in it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's just important to respect it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a key thing. You know, you're never going to be able to be part of somebody else's routine, but you can respect it from there. I know at the start mentioned, you know, having another call afterwards, just conscious of time. But from everything that we've chatted about there, I know there was a few tangents and other topics thrown in there. Really, all useful stuff. Felt like I should have been taking notes there. For everyone listening, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom?
Do exactly what you have done, which is start a podcast, because that will allow you to get people who you want to learn from, whoever they are, to basically teach you for free for an hour, and then just ask them whatever questions you're personally interested in. It is the biggest hack around today. It's like I don't understand why more people don't do it. It's like if you were to call me up and you're like, yo, John, can I like pick your brain about like content for an hour? I'd be like, no. I mean, I now have set my hourly rate at $1,000 because I really just don't want to do consulting. And then the first couple of people said yes, so it's too cheap, obviously, because I really don't want to do it. But you didn't pay me anything, and you could have asked me like very specific questions to you if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And we would have done like effectively a coaching session. If you're a young coach and you want mentorship, it's the best hack in the world.
Yeah. I must add that's part of the reason why I started it, because you know I got questions from members and clients on topics that I couldn't answer myself, and then I think I've progressed a lot more, you know, over the 2 years, 2 and a bit years that I've done the podcast, you know, speaking for more experienced you know, people such as yourself. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.
Take care. Thank you.